Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is a Friday, February 7th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them, even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that glowing heart icon, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. And if you have any of those to share with us, we would appreciate you doing so by giving us a call at 563-999-3581. Once you do that, I'm on autopilot. That's not the call-in number. Apologies. The best way to reach out to us is send me an email at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And when we get a comment or a question from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred so you can listen back to the archive for your feedback or input. Alternatively, if you want to reach out to us directly, if you're able to listen at live.needle.com/mindshiftersradio. If you go to your app store and download the Needle app, AI radio tuner, and then log in, it will give you the option to type in a comment or tap on the phone icon and talk to us live. And whether you send an email in a question or a comment or a testimonial, or you're able to join us through the Needle app, we greatly appreciate anybody who chooses to do that, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that's just loads easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. So we have plenty of time today for a comment or a question. And as I mentioned, we greatly appreciate whenever anybody chooses to do that. So let us know how these things are landing for you, what's working best for you. Yesterday was a Thursday, so we had a support group. We have support groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They're available absolutely free. We encourage you to participate and or forward the information to somebody you think might benefit from that. And all the information that you would need to join us is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website. And there's a separate login info page for Tuesday and a separate one for Thursday. And we had a support group last night, and we had somebody raise some poignant questions, and then we had somebody do a worksheet that, as often happens when people do a powerful worksheet, it generates a lot of energy, and sometimes people turn that into an emotional response. And if it gets intense, we encourage people, as we did last night, to do some emotional freedom technique tapping. And if you've never heard about emotional freedom technique, you can learn about it by going to emofree.com, emofree.com, emotional freedom technique. And or you can just go to YouTube and type in Brad Yates, how to tap. And he has about a 5-minute tutorial on how to tap. And once you learn his particular pattern for tapping, then you can go to YouTube and type in Brad Yates anxiety, Brad Yates back pain, Brad Yates rage, etc. Just about any topic you can think of. He will probably have a video where he's talking through the tapping process, and you can play it and tap along with him to great advantage. It's much like having your own tapping coach right there on your YouTube channel. And I've had people say, oh my gosh, Dr. Hayes, watching Brad Yates was just like taking the class with you. And the reason for that is because Brad and I have done a lot of work to try and stay very close to what Gary Craig presented. Gary Craig is the creator of EFT tapping. And years ago, he put on the internet this process of EFT tapping for free. It's an 80-page PDF file that he made available to people for free. And then, of course, he put out DVDs and had a lot of different seminars where he would teach people and demonstrate for them. And so I am very glad that Brad Yates has decided to create such a powerful, rich YouTube channel so that he can support people without it costing Brad a lot of money and without people having to pay a lot of money. Kind of to keep the tradition going that Gary Craig created this and then put it on the internet for free. So we did that last night. We had several rounds of EFT tapping to try and dissipate the intense emotions and help the individual who had done the worksheet let those energies flow through him, and it was quite beneficial. And we do that kind of thing on a regular basis almost every Tuesday and Thursday evening from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central Time. So there's that reminder, a little public service announcement, and please feel free to join us or pass that information along to somebody else that you think might benefit from it. I've gotten some feedback from different people about the Needle app and about losing the volume in the middle of the show or people getting dropped off, and we are forwarding those comments and statements to the creators of Needle, and so we appreciate that feedback. Thank you for letting us know, and please keep us posted as we move forward if that continues. or if you're having any experience with poor sound quality, or your call getting dropped, or you're unable to make a comment, etc. And we'll just keep refreshing the app and trying to keep up with the latest version, which has most of the fixes, and keep pursuing our ability to present this internet show to you. So yesterday, when we were reading, we finished reading the book Being Peace, written by Thich Nhat Hanh. And as I was thinking about where to go and what to do next, because so many of these shows happen without anybody raising a hand or calling in, I thought I would return to the book Of Course in Miracles, written by Alan Cohen. The subtitle is When Love Becomes a Way of Life. And I had been reading from that book earlier last year, and for whatever reason, I drifted away from it. So in lieu of somebody raising a question or asking a question or raising a hand to talk directly, I will start back in where we left off with the book Of Course in Miracles. And there's a chapter titled, Love Finds You Where You Are. Now, if you don't know this, Alan Cohen is one of my favorite authors because of books like A Course in Miracles Made Easy and The Tao Made Easy, and he has I have a very good friend who has an Alan Cohen daily reader, and so for a lot of years Alan Cohen would put out spiritual / self-help material and not let people know. He says he was kind of a closet Course in Miracles practitioner, reader, student. And then he finally put out the book A Course in Miracles Made Easy, and he outed himself. He announced to people, hey, you know what? People have liked my writings and said wonderful things about a lot of the stuff I've talked about for years. A lot of it comes from the Course in Miracles. So here we are. One of his more recent books is titled Of Course in Miracles. So chapter 10, titled Love Finds You Where You Are, and Alan writes, in the classic film Lost Horizon, the 1937 version, statesman Robert Conway is kidnapped and taken to the fabled Shangri-La, which is tucked away in the remote Himalayas. There he discovers a utopian community where people live in harmony. Everyone's needs are met, and love is the abiding reality. And then Alan writes, and yet, after a while, doubts overtake Conway, and he becomes convinced that Shangri-La is fake. So he departs and returns to his worldly life. Then he realizes he's made a terrible mistake. Shangri-La is true, and the, quote, real world, close quotes, outside paradise, that's the illusion. He must then make the huge effort to find his way back. Like Conway, we have all turned our back on paradise. Heaven is our home. Nothing less will fulfill us. We have been in the presence of love all the while, but we were distracted and looking elsewhere. Now we must find our way back. And then he quotes the textbook from the Course in Miracles to say, ours is simply the journey back to God, who is our home. Alan writes, A Course in Miracles calls us to rise in love by dissolving the illusions that stand between us and the divine presence. The Course doesn't advise us to go out and find someone to validate us, or to keep fixing ourselves until we become lovable, or to identify the place on the planet where there is more love and then go there. The Course in Miracles calls us to find love right where we stand, within us, just as we are. And then he quotes from the workbook of Course in Miracles, and it says, "Love remains the only present state whose source is here forever and forever." Alan writes, "The healing journey does not require us to go anywhere." And he quotes from the textbook of Course in Miracles, quote, "You travel but in dreams while safe at home," close quotes. Healing is a movement of consciousness, elevating your vision to discover the well-being that's already been bestowed upon you. We can change belief in isolation for the recognition that we are always connected. Spirit is aware of any need, and Spirit will supply it. He writes, "My friend Audrey became quite ill, nearly immobilized. She prayed for a sign that God was with her. Then she took her dog to a dog park. There, Audrey saw a tall, thin man wearing a white robe. He had long, flowing chestnut hair and a modest beard. To Audrey, he looked just like Jesus Christ. In that moment, Audrey felt comforted, and the weight of her illness dropped away from her. She later asked me, 'What do you think about that experience? What do you think it was about?' I told her, 'Jesus answered your prayer. Perhaps to give you solace, he manifested himself in a body, or maybe he sent someone who looked just like him to remind you that he is with you. How it happened doesn't matter. The experience is what matters.'" Alan writes, "If Jesus can show up in a dog park, he can find any one of us wherever we are. When I say, 'I am with you always,' I meant it literally. I am not absent to anyone in any situation." That's a quote from the textbook of the Course in Miracles. Alan writes, "While we may believe that love has forsaken us, the only real impossibility is that love is not where you stand. It's impossible for love to not be here. You're made of the stuff we call love. It's the energy of creation expressing in form. It goes beyond words every new heartbeat. It's the creative energy itself. You can't be outside of it. You can't be away from it." Alan goes on. Again, this is Alan Cohen from his book, Of Course in Miracles, When Love Becomes a Way of Life. He writes, "The ecstatic Persian poets, Rumi and Hafiz, were drunk with divine love. They called God, quote, 'the beloved,' close quotes, and they regarded their lives as a hide-and-seek game in which they had to pierce beyond the veils of earth to discover the beloved. Our task and our reward is the same. While we may seek a person to be our beloved, it is really our divine mate, our divine self, our higher self that we seek. This is the mystical marriage that the sages speak of. John of the Cross advised, quote, 'Take God for your spouse and friend, and walk with him continually, and you will not sin and will learn to love, and the things you must do will work out for you.'" Close quotes. Alan writes, "Do you remember the first time you fell in love? What a marvelous experience. I met my first girlfriend just out of high school. I was so happy. My drab world was replaced with joy and heart. We spent the entire summer together, and the rest of the world disappeared. I wish I could bottle that experience and sip from it whenever I feel disconnected. Then I went away to college, and we had a fight and broke up. The heady dream was over. The love was special love, not holy love. My life since that time has been a quest, and with the help of A Course in Miracles and other penetrating teachings, a quest to recapture that feeling without needing a person to incite it. Although that relationship did not last, the experience of love was real. Here's a quote from the textbook of Course in Miracles. Only His love is real, and God's Son will be content only with His reality. You are God's Son, God's offspring, male or female. Only that true, all-pervasive love can satisfy you at a deep level. Alan writes, we all just want to be in love. How we get there makes all the difference in whether or not the experience will sustain. He quotes the textbook from Course in Miracles as saying, the special love relationship is but a shabby substitute for what makes you whole in truth, not in illusion. Alan writes, while the world glorifies falling in love, our real adventure is to rise in love. Why would you want to descend when you can ascend? New Age texts and teachers talk about the ascension, close quotes. Quote, the ascension, close quotes. The real ascension is not an event in time. It is attaining a state of mind. Rather than waiting for love to reveal itself at a future date, we are redirected to accept and celebrate the love already given. Jesus said, quote, come, for all things are now ready, close quotes. That's from Luke 14:17. Including the love we have been seeking. A fellow in one of my seminars asked, quote, how can I let in more love from my girlfriend, close quotes. And I told him, you don't need to let more love in from your girlfriend. You need to let more love from within yourself out. We already own all the love we could ever want or need. We are like a musk deer who searches the mountains and valleys for the source of an intoxicating aroma, only to discover that the scent is emanating from itself. And that truth has been talked about countless ways over the years. Way of Mastery has a line where it says, you are like a person who possessed a private gem and you tucked it away in one of your many pockets so you wouldn't lose it. And then you forgot that you had it, and now you're out searching everyone you meet and searching their pockets trying to find the gem. The next quote he presents is from the textbook of Course in Miracles. Quote, if a mind perceives without love, it perceives an empty shell and is unaware of the spirit within. Close quotes. Alan writes, the search for love goes on until we are willing to find it. We must shift our identity from a spiritual seeker to a spiritual finder. Now, I don't know if he's getting this from a variety of different spaces or he's just getting this from A Course in Miracles, but that's exactly the same message in the Way of Mastery. You must choose to give up seeking and choose to be one who has found. Then he quotes the Course in Miracles. Every healer who searches fantasies for truth must be unhealed, because he does not know where to look for truth. And then he says, the Course urges us to consider, quote, do I want the problem or do I want the answer? D.H. Lawrence masterfully expressed that same dynamic when he said, quote, those that go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness, and the loveless never find love. Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. Close quotes. When we go through a hard time, it may seem that love has deserted us, but it remains fully present. We are not just seeing it. As a young woman, Sandra went through a golden phase of life, and she writes, I fell in love, married, enjoyed a prosperous career, and felt totally alive. And then, years later, things changed. I got divorced, my career fell apart, I developed physical issues, and eventually Sarah met a wonderful fellow, started a new creative job, and she felt much better. She writes, the golden time came around again. And then she thought for a moment and added, looking back now, I see that what I learned during my dark time matured me spiritually and prepared me for a new phase that went even deeper than my original golden time. So there was gold beneath the apparent emptiness. Alan writes, at one time, I was studying with two dynamic spiritual teachers who had joined forces. Then they had a falling out and parted ways. I felt disillusioned and confused. When I told the guru of my disappointment, he answered, what kind of happiness was that? The two teachers were together and you were happy. They parted and you are unhappy. Why give the power of your happiness to any outer condition? Shakespeare put it inimitably, quote, love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark. Close quotes. Alan writes, the ultimate awakening is to love that we simply are. And he quotes the Course in Miracles from the text that says, quote, the kingdom of heaven is you. Close quotes. The reason it's so hard to find love in the outer world is that we're looking in the wrong place. You cannot travel to a kingdom you already carry within you. When Socrates implored us to, quote, know thyself, close quotes, he was not calling us to know our personality, our body, or our social media page. He was urging us to know ourselves as the embodiments of pure love. The most fundamental love affair is with ourselves. External characters seem to show up and bring us love and then depart. But they represent states of mind and heart that we source from within ourselves. It is not narcissistic to fall or rise in love with yourself. Self-love is a prerequisite for loving others. And in this work, I would rephrase that to say, becoming aware that your true nature is love is a prerequisite to being able to recognize that same nature in everyone that you meet. Then he quotes the textbook from Course in Miracles that says, quote, know yourself in the one light, capital One, capital O-N-E, capital L-I-G-H-T, where the miracle that is you is perfectly clear. Know yourself in the one light, where the miracle that is you is perfectly clear. Then Alan writes, if God is love and God is everywhere, then love must be everywhere. And if love is everywhere, it must be in you. You cannot be apart from what you are. Everything in nature finds ultimate fulfillment simply by being itself. In the world of illusion, people and events shift, making us believe that we bob up and down with the winds and tides. However, truth places us on solid ground, immovable by passing shadows. Forever we are held in the arms of love. There is really nowhere else to go. And then he quotes the text from Course in Miracles to say, quote, the still infinity of endless peace surrounds you gently in its soft embrace. So strong and quiet, tranquil in the might of its creator, nothing can intrude upon the sacred offspring of God within. And then he offers at the end of these lessons miraculous insights, and there are 7 at the end of this chapter. He writes, what do you think has to happen, or where do you think you need to go to find happiness? And this reminds me of a quote from the book, The Mirror Theory, where it says, the moment you think someone or something outside of you needs to change for you to be happy, the key to happiness is lost. So Alan's second insight is the question, how might you find happiness right where you stand by changing your thoughts? The third question is, have you ever had a prayer answered by someone showing up at the perfect time in the perfect way and saying or doing something that you really needed to hear and see? His fourth question is, in what ways do you consider yourself to be a seeker? His fifth question is, how would you be thinking, feeling, and acting differently if you saw yourself as one who has found? Sixth question is, how might the difficult or seemingly void times in your life have been an element of your highest good? And his last question is, how would you be thinking, feeling, and acting differently if you knew you are love just as you are, and you are on your perfect path? Now, all of this, taken as a whole, reminds me of several people, probably close, maybe as many as 5 people, just in this week in my caseload, who are working on trying to feel better in and of themselves for various reasons, various challenges, and all of them eventually discover that the beliefs they're holding that drive their perception in the moment are centered around unsatisfactory or traumatic events from their past, during which or soon after they downloaded a belief that said they were bad or wrong or damaged or unworthy of love, etc. And to a person, when I'm dealing with individuals like this, I tell them over and over again, I can see you in your magnificence, in your strength, in your beauty, in your intelligence, in your creativity, in your resilience. And I can tell you about that. If you come to see me for years, I can tell you every time we're together how handsome, how beautiful, how creative, how loving, how powerful, how on and on and on, all of these superlatives, which might literally just be accurate descriptions rather than compliments. And yet, none of those messages get into the younger wounded parts of the people I'm talking to. So I invite people to the challenge of turning and facing, having an experiential interaction with the younger wounded part of themselves, with the part of themselves that clinging to a belief that says they're damaged or broken or they've caused a lot of pain and suffering in the world, and comfort that younger version of themselves from their adult perspective. And everything I just read from the Alan Cohen book titled Of Course in Miracles, in that lesson, that 10th lesson, speaks to me directly of this dynamic. If people come to me as a therapist or a spiritual teacher because they think I can guide them and I can say the right things to make them learn to love themselves or wake up to their true nature as love, they've missed the boat. Because all I can do is help them understand that everything they're doing to look outside of themselves, whether it's to someone like me or somebody very different from me or the culture in general or any kind of acquisition they can make, anything they can acquire from the outside, none of those things will help them feel the truth, awaken to the truth that they are already whole and complete just as they are. And as the ancient teachings say, nothing of value can be added unto them, and fortunately nothing of value can be taken from them. Money can be taken from them, clothes, cars, stereos can be taken from them, and yet the essence of their true nature as this energy of creation expressing in form, this consciousness, this source of creative energy, loving, compassionate consciousness, can't ever be chipped, dented, rusted, faded, or broken in any way. And they already possess all of it. So, I'm going to take a breather here and ask for comments or questions, ask for feedback about the quality of the sound and any unusual background noise as we are experimenting with various things to try and make sure we have the latest version of the Needle app and that we are getting a good, clear sound quality with a decent volume. As I have been reviewing the recordings of past shows, as I edit them to upload them for broadcast to the podcast platforms, we've noted that not only is the volume quite low on the recording, and people who call in have a much louder volume, but also there are times when the sound just drops out and there's silence. People have texted and commented about this in the past. Thank you if you've been one of those who've done that. And we're continually extending the invitation for you to do that again, to give us some feedback about how is the sound quality, are there gaps in the audio. I literally woke up the other morning thinking about, wait a minute, did I actually say that on the internet show? And I went back to the recording and I went to listen to it. And some parts of what I was thinking I had said, I did say. I was in the middle of saying it. And then there's a blank spot. And there's a minute or two of silence on the recording. And I don't know. When that happened, did I say this thing that I think I shouldn't have said? Or did it get out there on the live broadcast, but it's not there in the recording? Who knows? Maybe it didn't even get out there on the live. So we will continue to work with the technology and pursue any solutions to any issues that we come up with, and we greatly appreciate any feedback you can give us. And if you want to make a comment or call in, just go to your app store and search for the Needle app, N-E-D-L, AI Radio Tuner. And once you download that app, sign in, and hopefully favorite or follow this show, then anytime someone goes live, it'll ping your phone, and you'll get a notification. And we greatly appreciate when you do that. We also appreciate if you choose to tell others about the experience if you're finding this of benefit. So I will take a sip of water. And leave just a little bit of open space for anybody to raise a hand or type in a comment. And in lieu of that, rather than leave dead air space, I will return to the book by Alan Cohen titled, Of Course in Miracles. And his 11th chapter of that book is titled, Don't Just Stand There. I apologize. This is one of those synchronicities is messing with my thought process right now. Because yesterday, when I was reading the Thich Nhat Hanh book, Thich Nhat Hanh referenced this ancient wisdom that says, don't just do something, stand there. Slow down and be before deciding to do. So here we are in Alan Cohen's book. His 11th chapter is titled just that. Don't just do something, stand there. And Alan writes, many of us are good at doing lots of things. But one thing we're not good at doing is nothing. Lots of people find stillness and silence absolutely terrifying, and they flee from it. French mathematician and inventor Blaise Pascal said, quote, all human evil comes from a single cause, man's inability to sit still in a room, close quotes. And this reminds me of working with Dale Allen Hoffman and bringing him to town to give a series of workshops and having him say, a lot of times through his career, people have asked him, how do I take my work to the next level? And he said, well, the first step is you go home and you turn off all the lights and all the radios and all of the stimulation. You don't do mantras. You just sit in silence in your dark room, in your bedroom. No TV, no radio, no meditation process. You just sit there in silence. And he says, to a person, they have all come back to him and said, okay, what's the next step? And he would question them and ask, well, did you do the first part? And they would say, no, but what's the next step? And he said, doesn't matter. You can't get there if you're not willing to do this first step. What's that first step? It's what Blaise Pascal said. All human evil comes from a single cause, man's inability to sit still in a room. Alan Cohen goes on and writes, my neighbor Rosalind could not be still for more than a few minutes. Her life was a constant stream of errands, shopping, and emergencies. I observed her car going in and out of her driveway many times a day. Then I got to know her. Rosalind was raised in a punitive religion, and she felt guilty about everything. If anything bad happened to anyone around her, she thought it was her fault. That helped me understand Rosalind's obsessive busyness. She was running from herself. she would find that she feared that if she sat and faced herself, she would find an ugly, evil person. Nothing could be further from the truth. She was a kind, compassionate person. However, her self-image was horrid. So she was always on the run. And my Kindle decided to freeze up, so she was always on the run. Alan writes, A Course in Miracles graphically addresses this predicament. And then he quotes A Course in Miracles from the text. It says, quote, Loudly the ego tells you not to look inward, for if you do, your eyes will light on sin, and God will strike you blind. This you believe, and so you do not look. Close quotes. Alan writes, Yet, if we found the courage to face ourselves and pierce beyond the false veneer of evil, we would encounter a beautiful, holy, angelic being with whom we would fall in love instantly and forever. However, most people do not afford themselves that space. Many people avoid quiet like the plague. A sociological institute did a study of how long people can endure silence in a conversation before someone speaks to break the discomfort. That amount of time in this study was 3 to 4 seconds. After that, the babble resumes. Alan writes, I attended a church service at Princeton University where the spiritual master, Sri Chinmoy, was the guest speaker. At the appointed moment, the yogi stepped to the lectern, placed his hands together in the namaste position, closed his eyes, and bowed his head. He retained that prayerful posture in silence for about 20 minutes. Then Sri Chinmoy opened his eyes, bowed, and stepped off the stage. Alan writes, That was one of the best sermons I have ever heard. The God of deep quietude delivered the message that morning. Workbook Lesson 106 asks us to pray with, quote, Let me be still and listen to the truth, close quotes. We tend to assume that silence is empty, yet it is extremely rich. Metaphysical teacher Joel Goldsmith wrote a book titled The Thunder of Silence. If you have ever truly dropped into silence, you know that it is extremely rich, a far more compelling statement than the empty static that often consumes our mind. Goldsmith urged his students to meditate until the meditation takes over. When I experience a deep meditation, I don't want to leave it. My sense of peace is so fulfilling that nothing I would get up for would be more rewarding. That is the power of deep stillness. Silence paves the way for miracles. When I train holistic life coaches, I explain to them that silence and space are helpful elements of a coaching session. Usually, after a long silent moment, the client will say something important. Quietude moves the client to reflect and ponder what would be the next meaningful thing to say. I urge the coaches not to jump in and say something just because they feel pressured to keep the session moving along. Silence has motion in it. If you can relax while the wave goes out, the next wave will naturally come in. Then he quotes from the textbook of Course in Miracles where it says, quote, The miracle comes quietly into the mind that stops an instant and is still. Close quotes. Alan writes, silence also plays a major role in the cycles of our spiritual journey. The great masters retreat from activity and take refuge in stillness. Moses ascended to the summit of Mount Sinai, where it said God dictated the Ten Commandments to him, while Muhammad meditated in Hira cave. The angel Gabriel gave him the Quran. Jesus sequestered himself in the desert for 40 days, where he overcame 3 temptations hurled at him by the devil, aka the ego. When each of these prophets emerged from their silent time, they delivered their world-changing teachings to humanity. We enrich our lives and the lives of those we touch by following the example of those spiritual giants. In a world obsessed with busyness and often distracting technology, we gain immense spiritual power when we step back, breathe deeply, and listen. Some organizations now offer what they call unplugged retreats, in which participants get away for a long weekend and renounce electronic communication. Could you go 4 days without your phone or computer? If not, your screen may be screening out peace. One of the unplugged programs touts the motto, disconnect to reconnect. The slogan provides a potent summary of A Course in Miracles and its call to quietude. When we disconnect from the world, we reconnect to spirit. The Course tells us that either the body is real or spirit is real. For both you cannot have. You cannot simultaneously participate in noise and silence. There is a time for activity and a time for renewal. Self-nurturing is one of the most important contributions you can make to yourself, your loved ones, and the planet. Silence is the womb through which guidance is birthed. If you have a decision to make, don't act hastily. In quiet, ask Holy Spirit what He would have you do. Acting from spirit rather than ego will save you lots of time, trouble, and angst. And you will not have to go back and correct a faulty decision that you made for the wrong reasons. He quotes the workbook from Course in Miracles saying, quote, then wait a minute or so in silence, preferably with your eyes closed, and listen for His answer. Close quotes. If you are seeking guidance, create a path for it to find its way to you. Imagine that the answers to all of your questions and problems are loaded onto an airplane about to land. You see the approaching aircraft, you get excited, and you dash onto the runway, waving your hands and yelling, here I am, come on, land already, would you? Your scrambling about on the runway is precisely what is keeping the airplane from landing. If you would just step aside, take a seat, relax, and get quiet, you would clear the runway for the aircraft to deliver your gifts. And then he quotes the workbook where it says, quote, I will step back and let Him lead the way, close quotes. Alan goes on to say, dropping into silence is especially effective when you have to make a decision as a couple or in a group. Judy Scutch Whitson, who led the original publication of A Course in Miracles, tells that whenever the publishing team had a decision to make, everyone would get quiet and ask Holy Spirit for the answer. Invariably, Judy recounts, everyone came up with the same answer. Alan writes, I once joined with ACIM teachers Michael and Maloa Stillwater to organize and present a retreat. Several months before the program, we reached the date when we had to pay the retreat center and guarantee a certain amount of attendees. However, at that time, we had just a few sign-ups. If more people didn't register, we would sustain a huge loss. The three of us went round and round discussing the pros and cons of taking the risk or withdrawing. Finally, Maloa said, "Let's get quiet and ask for guidance." When we did, we all got the message to move ahead, and we paid the deposit. Soon afterward, lots of people signed up, and the retreat was filled. Lesson 182 from the workbook of Course in Miracles asks us to intend, quote, "I will be still an instant and go home," close quotes. The introduction to the Star Trek television series declared, "Space, the final frontier." Yet, outer space is not the final frontier. Inner space is. We can keep sending rockets, telescopes, probes, rovers, and people into outer space, and we will not find what we are looking for there. No matter how far we go, there will be a farther place. Only when we go in will we find what we are looking for. Then we fulfill the Starship Enterprise's mission, which says, quote, "to boldly go where no one has gone before." So, I will leave our reading there for the day. I have gratitude for everyone who's listening. This is a Friday, so we won't be back until Monday. Please remember that this show will end, and you'll have to open up your Needle app again. Hopefully soon after we go off the air, Michael and Jeannie will go on, and you'll get a ping on your phone. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff that we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.